All right, hello again. Uh, so in this video, uh, I'm going to kind of use some stories and experiences on when I was in the military and how we can kind of apply that to our civilian life. You know, in the military, you always call it the civilian life, but basically in day to day, you're living, uh, and how to try to start building experience with financial scenarios, building up your financial experience without having to actually have some of this experience. So in the military, tactical reading is really encouraged, and by that I mean you could read all the military manuals, warfighting publications, and stuff like that. But it's also really important to read other people's accounts of what they went through in combat. There's a couple actual stories where there's two books. I think it's called like The Bear Went Over the Mountain, and I think there's a second one. It's called like The Other Side of the Mountain, and that was basically Russia's experiences fighting. I guess maybe the Taliban while they're in Afghanistan. I think in the 80s and 90s, and lo and behold, we were reading it, stuff like that, and I remember hearing a story once where an officer had read the book, and it turns out that the he was in one of the valleys on the scenarios that were in the book, kind of explaining one of the events, and he recognized where he was, and bad guys were in the exact same spot, doing the exact same tactics that they did on the Russians like 20, 30 years before. So there's lots and lots of benefits from learning through others' experiences going through combat. And it's the exact same way in life in general. You can read business books of famous business people to see kind of what they did in certain situations, and you can learn from that. But then for us in financial situations, we can do the exact same thing. Not necessarily reading financial books, although those are good because they teach certain subjects on finances. But how do you learn from others, either mistakes or successes? And I think the big one, and I see this a lot, is whenever I go on different financial websites like CNBC, Google Finance, Yahoo Finance, stuff like that, and you see all these stories where people talk about, I'm 80 years old, I'm living on Social Security only, I don't think I'm going to make it. Well, when you start reading some of their stories, you find out that, oh, okay, this person had like a health event, a really bad health event, and he was laid out and spent all of his life savings on trying to recover from this event. And so it's not that he or she or that person was here they are at 80 years old, and they're living essentially paycheck to paycheck off their Social Security. But what the events that led up to him basically being just disappointed or miserable towards the end of his life. Well, you can learn from that. Like, okay, he had a health event. Was he taking care of his health? Did he have health insurance? Did he, maybe he didn't have life insurance or catastrophic, like all sorts of things. Was he, I don't know, was he just like a bartender or had a job that had zero benefits? Like, one of the benefits in the job that I'm at is, I have short-term, disability insurance and long-term disability insurance through my current employer. I also have like, TRICARE and stuff like that through the military. But I have all these different levels of insurances, and you know, some of those jobs without benefits. I'm not going to argue on whether every job should have benefits or not, but I know, like fundamentally, like some of them won't ever have, because in order to do that, very expensive. Could be one third or more of your expenses. Um, so adding to that just makes everything worse, especially if you're only like barely making it. So if you're young and the statistically you're less likely to have a major health event. Okay, yeah, you know, getting the bartender job or the retail job or some of these jobs temporarily that don't give you benefits would be okay, but not for your entire life, because inevitably something bad will happen, and you're right, kind of where this guy is. But kind of going back to what I was saying, if you start reading these little small individual scenarios, you start seeing patterns. Most of it is, they, something bad happened. They suffered a loss of income. They made one decision. Maybe they had savings. They tapped out their savings, and now they're like they're desperate, for money and income. Whereas if um, you know they had like planned before, it's like, okay, I have 6 months or 3 to 6 months of savings. If I get laid off today, I need to do X, Y, and Z to cut all the low hanging fruit, easy expenses down to a minimum. Um, and then you could even have thresholds that, okay, 1 month, um, I need to look into selling my house. I need to look into potentially selling my 2022 uh, Ford Mustang, and I just need to like sell it, get rid of it, and buy a junker. Like there's just certain things that you can do to keep expenses to like a really really low expense, and so maybe you could take that 3 months and extend it to 6 months, or 6 months and extend it to a year, or whatever. Um, but if you have these events happen and you never you just kind of continue on with your standard living and the lifestyle you're living, you're going to tap it like just as quick, if not quicker, than what you were planning, and then you're just right where you are, and you're suffering, and you are where you don't want to be. So you can learn from these things. So yeah, I'm not going to call it tactical reading. I'll call it financial reading. Studying from the successes and unfortunately the mistakes of others. So the next thing that we did in the military, we called like tactical decision making games. We create scenarios, and depending on the level, it could be at a small individual or level. If it was infantry, you could do like a fire team level. You could do squad. You could do platoon, company, battalion, like so on and so forth. In the armored vehicles, kind of like what I was in. Generally, you're only going to do it at like a platoon level, and you create the scenario, and then depending on how large it is, you're coordinating your how you work through that scenario. You can pretty much do the same thing financially on a individual scale, and I even kind of had some of these things where I presented a scenario, and you kind of work through it. One scenario could be hey, that major income loss, whether it's from getting laid off, getting fired, getting like a major health event. It could be all these things, or not all, but any of these things. And you put yourself in that situation, and what are the like with where you are now, and the savings that you have, like that day, what actions would you take in order to put you into back uh, on a business continuity, like up and running from like a business continuity perspective. So uh, if you don't have savings, like say if you got laid off and you had zero savings, well, okay, I'm screwed. I have 1 month, to get a job and things like that. And if you look historically at how hard or how long it's taken you to find a job, uh, maybe it's okay. Every time I've looked for a job, it's taken me 4 months. or it's taking me 6 months, or it's taking me a year, or you pick an appropriate amount of time. Well, when you backplan that, okay, I need 4 months of savings, or I need 5 months of savings, or 6 months of savings, or stuff like that. Um, what if I'm not going to the office, or I'm not going to work anymore because I got laid off, then some of these expenses are going to come down. So maybe instead of thinking I need uh, you know 2,000 a month for 4 months, say if I think I can get a job in 4 months. Well, instead of needing $8,000, maybe I can shrink that down to 6 or 7,000 in that period. So all these little thoughts that you can think of, uh, and you just run a scenario, and then run it again, and what are the lessons learned? If you ran the scenario where, okay, I got fired today and I have no savings. uh Luckily I paid my house, so I have a place to live for the month. But if it's taken me 4 months, every time I've looked for a job, on the average, if it's taken me 4 months, well, I'm pretty much guaranteed to be screwed. um so lesson learned, I need 4 months of savings, and you can put that into action over the next couple weeks and months, and hopefully not a year. But over time you can start building up that emergency savings to get about 4 months of living expenses. If that's impossible, or you don't even want to do that, maybe you can get into a position where, okay, I do have friends, I do have family, so if I were to get laid off, I'll look really hard for a month, and if I can't find it, then turn in the keys, and then unfortunately I go live with my parents. Probably be a good idea if you actually talk to them first. To just say, hey, in the event of X, Y, and Z happening, do you mind if I were to move in for the sole purpose of having a roof over my head and searching for a job? And then once I get the job, I'm out, and we're good. Hopefully your parents would say yes. I would say yes. I always want to be helpful to the kids, but maybe you don't have a good relationship with your parents, or maybe they passed on, um, and you can't actually do that anymore. um, Plan accordingly. Like, the amount of things that can happen, or everybody's situation, is literally impossible to completely map out. So it's a very personal thing, but come out with the most likely set of scenarios, and I had a video on that. Plan for the most likely scenarios, and most of it's either going to be like a major health event or income loss through, like, layoffs, firings, or anything like that. If you really want to have fun, do all those hard ones first, and then once you're done, and you got the stuff that's most likely to happen, then you can go plan for your alien invasions. Then you can go plan for civil war, whatever. It's basically just like prepping, um, but hopefully a little bit more realistic. I think preppers have a lot of good thoughts and things, but sometimes they can go overboard and plan for unlikely or less likely things to happen, and not plan for things most or more likely to happen. So it's really just priorities. Okay, I think that's it. Uh, and about 15 minutes. Um, so tell me what you think. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you kind of want to hear more about these videos, please subscribe. And if you have any comments, please leave them. Comments are very helpful for getting ideas on what future videos to make, and just to kind of get feedback. Um, if there was something in this I didn't think about, or you have different scenarios or questions, hey, lay them, and I'll be more than happy to answer to the best of my ability. So, okay, that's it. Be able to keep this in under 15 minutes, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.